Well, I want to thank you so much, my dear friends and sisters. I'm an only child, so this moment is very precious to me. And as a supervisor here in the Potomac District, it gives me great joy to invite you into my office. The Fitzgeralds, from the legacy of Miss Fannie Fitzgerald. I'm here with my two friends, Kim Fitzgerald-Lennon and Benita Fitzgerald-Mosley. And when I thought about talking about legacy and sisterhood, you are the pinnacle of what that role model is for our sisterhood, combined sisterhood. And so I want to start off, first of all, by saying thank you. Thank you for sharing your mom with our community. She was absolutely the role model that we all wanted to emulate in this community as we grew as young women, as we grew as seasoned women. And so I want to highlight her in this moment as well, because without her, there would not be you. So that's very important. And so let's talk a little bit about Mrs. Fannie Fitzgerald, and of course your wonderful father. But I'm going to let you do that. And I want to talk to you. I want you to start off and talking to us about Miss Fannie Fitzgerald and legacy. What did that legacy mean to you?
We had the benefit of having a mom. We were both a little bit older when we had kids, and my mom, we think of her as being a little older, but she was definitely much younger than we were when we had our kids. She was in her early 30s, and when she had me, I think 30 or 31. And she always just had this elegance about
Absolutely.
her. And, never left the house with the hair out of place or and just dressed to the nines. But it was a representation of what was going on in the inside as opposed to the other way around. Like
Yes.
she was confident, and she was always wanting to put her best foot forward, always wanting to represent herself and her family in the best light. And it came from that space, right, of a sense of pride and well-being that she projected both from the inside and outside, I think, that has trickled down to us of always wanting to represent ourselves and our family in the best light. That's we have a responsibility to do that and give of our best in whatever endeavor that we choose. And both of our parents, our dad Roger Fitzgerald and my mom, represented that. They always gave their best. They always gave of themselves, to whatever endeavor they pursued. And so we don't settle for less.
Absolutely.
And I think, that didn't just come by itself, but both of our parents came from two-parent homes. Both of our grandfathers were ministers, and my mother is one of 11 children.
Yes.
So she had 4 brothers and 6 sisters. So, her parents,
All older.
valued education and made sure that everyone, as much as they possibly could at that time, were able to get as much education as they could, and presented themselves in a certain way, and supported them, and of course, they were pillars of the community themselves. So my mom and dad both got that from their parents, and then were able to pass that on to us. So we were honored to have been surrounded by our aunts. Our uncles we knew as well, but a couple of them passed on early, and our aunts, my mother's sisters, they were very, very close.
Yes, I remember that.
Do you remember
Yes,
that?
I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we lost them all within the last couple of years. It'll be 5 years since Mom passed, but
There was a spate where we just kept
when we
on
just
losing.
where everyone was here, and then
Yeah,
all of
then
a
all of a
sudden
sudden
they
they were
weren't.
gone.
Her last sister, our last aunt, passed just recently. She was 93, and prior to that, the 97, or Aunt Susie was 97. So we had them for a very, very, very long time, and the sisterhood between them and the just the love, and they were one another's best friends, was a great thing to witness as we were growing up. We went to their houses for meals and holidays, and they came to us, and just a beautiful family altogether. So my mom and dad really, they come from good, a good strong family background, and they were able to. Why don't you tell the story of the street extension?
Oh, yeah.
To this point?
So we were told that the street was going to be extended. It stopped at Cardinal Drive, or not Cardinal Drive, Cloverdale Road or something. And it was a pretty short street. In fact, I got to run the Olympic torch down Benita Fitzgerald Drive in '96 ahead of the Olympics in Atlanta. And that was a glorious day for our family and for the community. And then, several years later, it's probably a decade later, they were saying, hey, we're extending the street. And so they built the street, and they're starting to build townhomes on it and everything. And they said, well, on the other side of Dale Boulevard, the street goes from Dale Boulevard to Cardinal Drive. We're going to do a ribbon cutting when we, open that end of the street to Cardinal Drive at the intersection there. And so they had a ceremony. There were several school board members, supervisor, Pastortorium was there from First Virginia Baptist Church. I don't think it was a delegate quite yet. And so we did the ceremony, we did the ribbon cutting, photographs and media or whatever. And then someone from the school board comes over and says, there's going to be a school right here at the corner of Cardinal Drive and Benita Fitzgerald Drive. I said, really? I said, yeah, the next year or so we're going to start construction. And I remember thinking to myself, and I probably mentioned it to Kim and my husband, I was like, they need to name that. They said, well, they should name the school after you. And I said,
Someone said, they should name the school after
no,
you.
they should name the school after my mom. And so I told him that. And the two of us never really thought about
anything else, because this was when 07, 06? Probably in 2006.
Or, yeah, probably so.
Yeah, right around there, right
and
in
so,
2006.
we just didn't even think about it. We didn't talk about it because it wasn't like it was imminent. In our minds anyway, it wasn't imminent. Well, coming to find out, it probably was. Because in order to open
it was probably in the plan.
Yeah, and so next thing we know, they were talking about what they're going to name the school, and a petition started
Denise
by
McPhail
and
Lily Jesse.
Lily Jesse, God love them both, and
I signed the petition.
and
it just snowballed and really just gained traction, and sure enough,
it just didn't make any sense to do anything else.
Yeah,
It really did.
I don't know if there's any place else in the world where a school is named after a woman and the street that it sits on is named after her daughter.
And then
I don't think it exists in the world, any place. In fact, I've never seen or heard of it. So I just am so proud, honestly, to think about it. And anytime I drive, I'm not in Dale City all that often, but anytime I am, I go by and see Benita Fitzgerald Drive, and then I was like, well, we gotta take a detour. Like, there's no way I can just go by the street and not go see the school,
Yeah.
So, and it's a nice shortcut for people. People used to have to
It
go,
really
is.
as in country folks say, way around Robin Hood's barn to get from point A to point B, and now you just
Just
take
cut
that little
straight through.
shortcut. Yeah.
Oh, my.
So people appreciate Benita Fitzgerald Drive more than I probably even know.
Yeah.
The other thing is that it commemorates, I think, a couple of things within Prince William County, or that the legacy of myself and my mom. One, obviously the day that I won the gold medal in the Olympic Games in '84, and then obviously the integration of schools and the Courageous Four, and the impact, long-term impact that's had on Prince William County and everyone who lives here. And so we were, I talk to people all the time, and they'll say, well, when you won your gold medal, this is where I was, or this is where I was doing, and this is where, and it's always this amazing thing, because it's one of those things, that you think of, when Kobe died, this is where I was, or when Martin Luther King gave a speech, this is what I was doing, or this is when, so-and-so won the Oscar, Denzel won it. You think there's these things that happen in life, and you're thinking, where was I, what was I doing, what period of life that was for me. And to hear people recount stories about a moment in time that was certainly important to me, how it impacted their lives, and how proud, how proud they were, and how connected they felt to that success. It's just amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And just to hear you describe it, certainly when we moved in the county, that is the descriptor that we had, and And it's a blessing to the county, the entire Fitzgerald family, certainly with your success as in the Olympics, but it's a blessing to the entire county. So I want to segue, if I can, to this, because, and I want to paint this picture to let you know how important this moment is with the sisterhood that you share to our county, but to the country. And what I mean by that is, I'm an only child, don't have sisters and brothers, of course. I've got cousins who are like sisters and brothers to me, both on my mom and dad's side. And I was raised with them as if we were sisters and brothers. But at the end of the day, I go home to my mom's house by myself in my bed with no sisters and brothers, you know? And so to have relationships with women like you, and all of my friends that I have strong relationships with, strong ties, and certainly to have had a relationship with your mom, the sisterhood piece is very, very important when you talk about legacy. And I know that both of you have girls and a son, you know, but to teach them the importance of that kind of relationship is very important to generationally, you know. So I want you to start by talking about your sisterhood and how that came about, because we were expecting a little bunny and we got it. And fortunately and thankfully and spiritually, and in the blessed union of that sisterhood. Tell us about that.
I think that it's weird because we're 6 years apart, and a lot of siblings 6 years apart wouldn't be anywhere as close.
In fact, I know there are siblings, I know siblings who are the same distance apart as we are, and they are not close. So I agree. I think part of it is what I said earlier, in that she wanted that little sister. She prayed for that little sister, and she was excited when I got there. And I think I have felt that throughout my lifetime. My sissy, my big sissy.
Yeah.
So I think that's a part of it. And
we just, I think, this pandemic has wreaked havoc on everybody, but it's also brought some blessings. And
Yes,
the blessing of being at home, having my son back from our house, doing school virtually, having my daughter in the home, 24/7, doing school virtually, and us working from home, me not traveling. I travel probably 50% of the time on my mother's job. So just having that time together, and we have, that's cementing our relationship even further. We had that with my parents because they were educators, and so they were home in the evenings.
Yes.
There was dinner on the table 5, 6 o'clock early every evening. We spent a lot of quality time together as a family. And Kim and I played together. We played Barbies together. We played, we did all kinds of things.
And outside together, and in the backyard. We had a large backyard, and in the neighborhood kids. And so, and at that time, we did have kids playing together. I was young, 2, 3, 4, and I was, in a group of kids that were playing. They were 11, 12, 13. There was that wide range.
But everybody played
got
with
along.
everybody, and she might be riding her big wheel with Tony Deibler, and I'm
and Michelle Beck, exactly.
with the older sisters.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We lived in a court. We lived at 12 o'clock on the court.
Okay.
So you come down the hill, and we were right there.
Right
we
in
were
the center.
right in the center, in the cul-de-sac.
All the
there.
family, yes, we remember the Levesques and the Purdy's and the Dadlers and the Caldwells and the Coxes, and yes, we remember all of them. And we stay connected on Facebook. And so there's a Facebook group, Daytona Court.
Really?
Facebook group, yes.
Continual relationships.
Yes.
So I think we continue that through. Well, my husband and I have twins. So we have 17-year-old twins, and Maya is 17. So they're 4 months apart.
So we were pregnant at the same time.
Maya's 4 months younger. So,
Yeah.
but in essence, they're triplets.
Yeah.
So,
And my son was 5 when they were born.
when they're born.
Yeah.
So our parents thought, oh, we're just gonna have the one grandchild. That's fine. Had it for 5 years, and within 4 months, boom, they had 3 girls.
Wow.
So the girls have been raised together, of course. really very much like triplets, and since
And our mom would dress them like triplets.
yes,
Every
and since-
Easter, and every Christmas.
Oh.
and some
She-
Sundays.
Yes, she bought the same dresses for all three girls.
You know, I vaguely remember
You
that.
remember that?
They
Yeah.
would show up at church in their
in their
matching
frocks.
dresses.
Mhm.
You know, because I thought they were all sisters. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And they share Olivia. Olivia's her middle name is Beatrice, which is my mother's middle name.
Okay.
Maya's middle name, Lynette, is my middle name, and Antoinette, my other twins, Patrice, is Benita's middle name. So we kind of share
Again,
those
legacy.
names again. Legacy
Yeah.
continues. So they're
So
very,
yeah, they've been raised as siblings essentially. When my parents were still alive, we were. Isaiah was born in Colorado. I was working for the U.S. Olympic Committee. Then I worked for them twice. But the first stint, we were in Colorado Springs, and when he was 2, I took a job where they moved me back to the East Coast because I wanted to get close to my family. And Ron's from Ohio, so it's just a 5 or 6 hour drive from here, but Colorado was, way far away. And so when we came back, it was lovely. It was every Sunday at my parents' house for dinner. We'd go to church, and then we
Go to
mom's,
Yeah.
mom and dad's house.
she
And
cooked
Oh my
wonderful
God.
meal for
Did
all
she
the
ever?
10 of us.
Yeah.
Daddy always referred to us
And
as
so
the
then
10
as
of us.
the other kids came, it was all 10 of us, and every Sunday, they moved to
Four Seasons.
Four Seasons, which is
Yeah.
right across from the church, which
Yes.
was wonderful. So we would just, scoot across the way, and we literally spent the whole day. We wouldn't leave till 8 or 9 o'clock at night,
That's awesome.
every
That's so
Sunday.
awesome.
And take pajamas for the
Yes,
kids,
so
and
they
have them in
could-
pajamas before we got home sometimes.
And all they have to do is
Yeah,
go to
so
Yeah,
bed.
go to bed.
all you have to do is go
That's
to bed,
awesome.
wipe their old faces off or something, and put them in the bed. And so they grew up, every Sunday, this family time, this,
Yeah.
legacy sharing, this
Yeah.
passing stories down, this watching the Washington football team, and whatever.
Oh, I remember
Breaking
that.
bread.
Yeah.
And so it's just been, family's just ingrained, and so yes, we're close. We've always been close. We were roommates for a while. We told you a story of parents kicking us out of the house when we had returned
Yes.
from our
College and
College,
wife.
yeah.
And,
Where you thought you had it all
We
under
thought we
control.
did.
We
just
did.
Mom and Dad,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we were roommates for a couple of years there, and so yeah, we just stay close. We talk all the time, and we
That's so
are there for
wonderful.
each other. And now I'm seeing that the kids are there for each other. They're very much in tune with one another.
Yeah.
their social media accounts, and
They just keep in touch with what's going on. And sometimes her daughters will just come and spend a week with me.
That's awesome.
They just come spend a week. Hey, Auntie B, we're going to be here for a few days. They'll come Sunday with their suitcases. And
so
And
we'll
it's
go
okay.
and eat dinner, and we leave. Antonio and I will go,
Yeah.
and the girls will stay there,
just
and
stay.
their vacation home, and
yeah.
Just
and
family.
hang out.
So they know the importance of relationship. And I see Isaiah a lot. He's like the hub.
Yeah.
He really is. He's the big brother
He's
to
the
everybody.
big brother
absolutely.
to all
They
three of
love
them.
him.
Yeah.
They just love him to
They,
death.
especially when they were little, I mean, they used to hang all over him. He just, just let them climb all over him, and he'd play with them. And but there's 5 years between them, but you would never know
You would
it.
never know it.
No.
Even so, the thing about it, and see, this is what I love about it. This is the part that I know I missed growing up, even though I had cousins, but that is so essential to our world today. So I want to talk about specifics, because I see also if there's a grand, and I saw the legacy passed on because that's how she carried herself, Miss Fannie. I see the respect that you have for each other. I see the honor that you have for each other. I see the authenticity that you have for each other. And I think in our relationship as women, any hue, all of those things are very important as we live our lives, as we have careers, as we pass on the torch. All of those things are very important, and I think that's a piece in our world that we've lost, quite frankly. So I want to, in terms of the sisterhood and passing that on, with this piece especially, what does that look like to you as sisters as you go in your respective careers and you come together as family and passing that on to the next generation?
So I left the nest at 16, right? I made
Sounds
my
like
first,
you.
Yeah,
first
right.
national team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And went to Russia in 1978 during the Cold War.
Wow.
When we had missiles pointed at each other. I'm sure we still do, but they were pointed a little more aggressively. And my parents had to make the decision to let me go. Okay, she's going to Team USA. She's going on an airplane for the first time. She's leaving us, and we can't be there to protect her. And
big opportunity, big decision.
yeah. And so they made the decision. They talked to the team managers, and her name was Pearlie McDaniel, was the head manager. God rest her soul. And she lived in D.C. actually.
I was going to say, why does that name sound familiar?
You never know. You may have known her, but she lived in D.C. and so she got on the phone with my parents and convinced them that she had a handle. She was not going to let anything happen to their baby girl. And so they were like, okay, I guess we're going to have to let her go. And from that moment on, I'm flitting and flighting all over the country and all over the world. And even though it was a couple years before I went on to school at University of Tennessee, I've been gone, right?
Yes.
And so Kim is the exact opposite. She has done the thing. She's been a teacher. She went to grad school, and she's, teaching at mom's school now. But she's 30-some year career as a teacher. She's always lived in Prince William County.
Well, almost.
Well, yeah.
Stafford and Fredericksburg for a little while, but yes, but just definitely in this area.
Yeah, and so not ventured out, as I have, but we respect each other for what we've done. She's had that. She has a different kind of legacy than I have, and particularly when our parents started getting ill, she was the one that was holding down the fort. I couldn't do that. I'm in Colorado Springs during the worst of it.
I remember.
And it's all on her, and even towards the end of my mom's life, I'm living in Colorado. I had a new job in New York, and my mom was in Virginia. So this is how bad it was. In July, I would never forget it. It was July 4th. I got a notification in the mail from United Airlines that I was a 100K flyer. In July. Between January and really quite frankly it was February to July, I had flown 100,000 miles on United.
Wow.
And so, every year since then I've been 100,000 miles flyer. That's how much I'm moving. But that year in particular, in that short stint, was because I was trying to, but she was doing it every day. But I'm trying to come back and check in and come back and help and come back and see mama. But no, she was holding down the fort. So you talk about respect and appreciation. It goes well beyond just, yes, she's an amazing mom and teacher and sister and all that, but I hold her in high esteem because she was able to keep all of that going and give our parents the love that they needed and attention that they needed to ensure that they got what they needed to be comfortable.
And assured in that state.
Yeah.
I remember those days because our moms were in a similar facility together, assisted living facility together. And I remember we had a birthday party for my mom, and I think both of you are in the picture when we had that. Remember that?
Yes,
I remember that.
Yes, I do remember that.
So that when you talk about the honor and respect for caregiving, that platitude as well, that's something, because I'm in that stage now with my mom, and I recognize, and I remember that you were traveling a lot, and but when you guys came together, the honor that you gave to your mom and your dad, as they were in their very seasoned years and in their ailing years, how you orchestrated that together in your sisterhood.
And even when we couldn't, our husbands then came
Yes.
to the rescue.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
You know, we'll remember sitting at Silver Diner one afternoon, and our husbands were like, "You understand that you moved your dad out of the house. Your mom hasn't been in the house since, spent a night in the house since your dad left. She's been with Kim or with me,
Yeah.
and she would go back and forth, spend a week with me or 2 weeks with me, spend a couple weeks with Kim, come back to me, and so they were like, we need to sell their house. We need to pack up their house. We need to sell their house. So
Need to move on to the next stage.
To the next
Yeah, so
stage.
they
and we were just kind of sitting there like the reality hitting us.
Yeah.
They're absolutely right, but I don't know.
we would have come to that soon, that
No.
conclusion
No.
that soon.
No way. Nor could we have actually done it.
Because tradition is, again, we're talking about legacy and tradition.
Yeah.
That's just not what you do.
No, I
Right.
mean that's the house where every Sunday we were getting together and gathering, and that's the
Yeah,
house
kids
where
have
mom
grown.
cooks
Yeah.
Sunday
Mom
dinner.
cooks
We
meals
don't
there.
cook
We don't
Sunday
do
dinner.
that.
That's
Yeah,
what
I
mom
know.
does. Like we clean up the kitchen. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
so it's shifted all of a
Yes.
sudden.
Yes.
And sitting there with them, and this we've got a plan for what we're gonna do. You know, we gotta get a realtor. We gotta put the house up for sale. We
Yeah.
gotta pack up the thing. We gotta find some storage. And we just sat there, literally dumbfounded. And those two orchestrated the whole thing.
Wow. They did.
So,
What a blessing.
and we've had support, of course, from our husbands, but I think you recall those times, and a lot of times you forget the details. But there was support for me from a lot of different people, a lot of different family and friends and
Yeah.
community, in a lot of different situations. When mom and dad were here after they passed, there was a health event for my husband not too long ago, about 4 years ago. And you mentioned sisterhood, and I think that is important, very important. It's been important in my life. I am less of a committee member, if you will. I don't belong to some of the organizations that my mom belonged to, that my sister does. But I have some really good, strong friendships and people that I can depend on, people who I can call on anytime, even though maybe I haven't spoken to them in a long time.
Yeah.
I know that there's a connection there, that I can garner support from them,
Yes.
or that I can be there to support them as well.
Yes.
And you talked about the erosion of that, and I think you're exactly right. I think we tend to forget, or we tend to get wrapped up into our own lives and into what we're doing, and somehow think that this is the first and only time this has happened.
Yes.
And instead of really seeking that help and that support, we sort of shut ourselves off.
We do.
I was speaking to, actually she's a current colleague, and she's had some major life changes recently. She's a virtual teacher as well, and I just spoke with her on the phone yesterday, and she and her husband had gone through some issues having children, and she recounted the entire story. So I haven't really said much, this, that, and the other, but she recounted what's been going on in the last 6 months to a year. And after she finished, she talked probably about 10-15 minutes after she finished, and she said, you know what, that was me. That was me 20 years ago, almost to the letter.
Oh,
And so she said, really?
had no clue.
Right.
Yeah.
And had she maybe mentioned, I know we're colleagues, but at the same time, that has blurred and changed during COVID. I talk to people that I work with more now than I ever have, and in depth. And so just think if she had said something to me, I could have supported her through that. She was talking about
Yes.
those trying times and this one. I've been there, and I've kind of done that. So I think sometimes we don't open ourselves up to getting that support and that help that we need. And sometimes I think we need to step back and allow ourselves to help those people, just even if it's a moment in time. I know
Yes.
people talk about those long-term relationships. I think those are very important and critical, but sometimes you just need that net for that
Yeah.
moment in time. You need someone to just hold you for that little while
For
until
a
you
lift.
can get, yes, until you can get to the next stage. And so there thankfully have been people like that in my life, some of whom have come from my mother's life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Many of whom
Yes.
are those same women who, when I was in diapers, or I was too, are still supporting. And women in particular, I think, are just, they're just blossoming. And women of color in particular are just really statistically, in terms of getting degrees and being entrepreneurs and those types of things, I think more than ever we need to pull together and really mentor one another and support one another and be there for one another. Find solutions, these childcare solutions. I think COVID has brought those things to the fore,
Absolutely.
Healthcare and childcare. And I read an article recently about how women aren't believed. They go to their doctors and the doctors, they have these complaints that, oh no, it's not, and they find out they have stage 3 cancer. They find out they, I have a girlfriend that's going through it. Every time I talk to her, she says, finally they ordered this test, and guess what? It's what I've been saying all along. She happens to be a white woman. I figured if it's going to happen to her, absolutely, what would happen to me? So I think that we really have gains to make in terms of women, but we're doing well.
We're doing really well.
We are doing very well. But I think if we really focused on being a cohesive unit and supporting one another, we could do even better.
So
I think that needs to happen in the workplace too. And it needs to happen in our families and our friend circles and our community organizations, our churches. But in the workplace, that's where women oftentimes will look at this as a zero-sum game. That if I rise, then you must stay
not
down,
rise.
right?
Yeah.
Or I have to keep you down in order to, I have to marginalize you in order to elevate myself, and as if there's only a set number of positions or slots or something for me. Well, there may be 5 white gentlemen out of 7 executives in the company. Why couldn't there be 5 black women in those same roles? Is there some quota that we
is there a
know?
rule?
Is there a rule that is So I think that the first thing to do to really create a higher level of sisterhood is to appreciate the fact that we can rule the world. We could be the majority. We could be in certain instances that we have the power and the wherewithal to do whatever it is we want, and there's not a limit to the numbers of us that can ascend to different positions and take on different leadership roles. And so helping one another get there is not going to keep you from also achieving the things that you want to achieve. And so having a different kind of shifting that mindset to a more kind of plentiful mindset. Broader mindset to think that, okay, well, if one of us got there, and once one of us gets there, let's just bring more of us there with us. Each one, teach one, each one, reach one, each one, bring one, So I'm in a little different position now. I guess maybe just the maturity that I'm doing it, and I'm saying it. I was saying to you a little earlier that I was explaining to my boss, diversity doesn't equal underserved, and underserved doesn't equal diversity. That there are plenty of
That's
people
a rich statement. That's
who
very
are
rich.
diverse and are not under-resourced in any way, and there are plenty of people who are under-resourced and don't happen to be people of diverse backgrounds, and so they don't go hand in hand. And when we're thinking about helping those who may be less fortunate, don't look down on them as if they are somehow lacking in character or lacking in ambition or lacking in abilities or intellect or
just lacking.
anything. They're not lacking, they just don't have the same economic resources that you have. They may not have had the same 2-parent household.
They didn't have Fannie and Roger. Right. They may not have had Fannie.
We just got lucky.
Right.
We got very fortunate to have the parents that we had. But all I know is I look at my husband, and he grew up in what we would consider underserved community, and he end up going to Brown University and playing football, getting an engineering degree, and being a sales executive. And so that didn't keep him down. And so and he goes back to the community. He gathers up all his nieces and nephews, and we expose them to all kinds of things that we can. So several of them live with us for a period of time. And so we have to broaden our horizons, broaden our thinking, to think about the possibilities and the potential
Yes.
that lies within people, and the potential that that lives within institutions to adopt a more open and welcoming attitude. And that if Black Lives Matter and the racial social justice movement has done anything, I believe, for people like myself, it has empowered me to speak up, to say that, to say don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
Diversity, underserved, two different concepts.
Yes.
And
Yes.
don't conflate the two.
Yes.
And
Yes.
or say, gosh, we have these open roles. I'm thinking that we want to ensure that at least X of them, are people of color, and we need to be very deliberate about that.
About that. Yes.
And in this particular slot, I know that with this particular slot, if we can't find a person of color for that slot, shame on us, based upon the people that I know in that particular sport or league that are of color, that are high-level executives, that if we can't find somebody, that's on us. Right?
That is on us.
And
That's
so,
on our
and just
plate.
making, serving notice to people.
Yeah.
Don't come at me with a slate that's not diverse, right?
Right.
And saying that out loud.
Yeah.
And speaking up about it.
I said
think
it out
that's
loud. I
right.
said it to
I
the
think
HR
that's
person.
right.
I said it to my boss. I said it to the people who work
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
me.
But you're
work
there.
for me.
I don't think there are a lot of other people who are there yet, and I agree with you. I think it's definitely, and not in an arrogant or a,
No.
but it's not that. It's just a matter of fact.
It's fact.
It is.
It's fact.
It's fact. So I
And I'm not ashamed.
right.
to say it.
Right. I work in a Title I school, so Fannie W. Fitzgerald is a Title I school. We serve an extremely diverse population. I believe we have 40 languages represented in our school.
Excellent.
So lots of.
She would be pleased with that.
She would be. She was. She loved when she was living. She was there the first day of school every single year, greeting students, hugging, taking pictures. The night programs that they had there, the talent shows and things. She and Daddy were always present, and they just enjoyed it so much.
Yeah.
But she did. She loved greeting the kids and seeing the kids, and I love that population of students. When I went to elementary school here in Dale City, at Dale City Elementary, and I went with Mom. Mom was a teacher at Dale City Elementary, and she brought me with her. I had horrible asthma, and that was one of the reasons she wanted me close to her, is because of my health. So I spent that time there. But at that time, our school system was about 4% or less Black people of color. So a very white population in my school. And so this is quite the reverse in this school. So my twins went to school at Fannie W. Fitzgerald. They started in 2008. The school opened in 2008. And they spent their entire elementary career at the school. And one of the reasons that I really cherish the fact that they had their first school experience there was because of the number of students who looked like them and the number of staff members that looked like them. The very first principal took it upon herself to make sure she hired teachers who looked like students. And so by and large, we had a population of staff that was much more diverse than neighboring schools. That's less so now. And as those new hires come in, I've started noticing that it's less and less and less, that it's much less diverse than it used to be. And it's cause for concern. And I, like Benita, think, well, is it because we can't find, or because we're not looking, or because the pool? But I start to question why that is. Because I was, the girls mention it now. They went from that school to a school that was predominantly middle school, to our base school, middle school and high school that are predominantly white. And they miss that atmosphere. They miss feeling more apart and more of that more homogeneous, that connectiveness. And they learned so much from being in that environment, to accept their hair and they accept their skin, that's not a thing. Sort of like as I grew up, it didn't affect me in a negative way. And so I I agree with Benita that has to be something that's on the floor, that we really need to talk about what that looks like, and be much more inclusive. These kids are impressionable. My kindergartners, representation matters.
Yeah.
Representation 100% matters.
First impression.
When they see, when you see someone, a woman in that position, all my doctors are women. Ever since my girls were little, all of my doctors are women. I wanted my girls to know that
they can become doctors.
Right? They can become doctors.
Yes.
And that women are doctors. And then when they draw that picture of a doctor, it's a woman.
Yeah.
I think that it really matters for them to be able to see people in those positions, people of color in those positions, women in those positions, people who use wheelchairs in particular positions. You know, in my classroom, I have posters and things up. I had a girl who used a wheelchair year before last. I made sure that, you know, my music, you know, tag, when we had music, had a child that used a wheelchair in the music tag. You know, in our toys, we had a wheelchair in the toys, and so it really does matter. Kids need to see people who are covered, people in different religions, those kinds of things.
Wear the hijab.
The hijab, right?
But that doesn't matter because it's the face.
Absolutely, and the actions. My parental instructional assistant wears a hijab, so she's, you know, that becomes the norm to them. It's not something different. It's not something foreign. It's not something to make fun of. It's not something
to be afraid of.
Or to not accept. So we're changing. I think the kids are changing much faster. The younger generation is changing much faster, and they're more accepting in many cases. And they're kind of leading us, and we need to make sure that we're holding up our end of the bargain.
Yeah, and we're accountable to that.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm going to close out with this piece, because you just mentioned something that I think, certainly as an elected official in my new position, I certainly take the accountability of representing well, not just my culture and my skin color, but women. And I take the accountability of what legacy am I leaving behind, being one of the first in the seat here in Prince William County. I take the onus of that, and I know that God has chosen me to be here for this time, for that thing, to be able to pass something on that is positive, that is hopeful, that is all inclusive, that shows Prince William County that this is very much real and reasonable, and a way of life. And so one of the things I'm very sensitive to is the fear factor that we as women, particularly because of our nurturing behaviors, of our know-how. We know how to do anything. I just believe women can do anything. And we always have, even if they're not structured goals, they are very much strategic goals. You know, may not have a degree, but you know, how am I going to feed my family for the next week? You know, and then how, in my income situation, can I get my child to earn a scholarship so I don't have to pay for that college education? So we're always very strategic. So my ask of you right now is to close out by talking about eliminating the fear factor as women and what we represent, and infusing the hope. I had this almost similar experiences that you've had without having a father in the home. But we didn't turn out so bad.
No, not at all.
So I want you to talk to that fear factor that we have, particularly women of color, but women collectively, and the hope that we can breathe in the legacy.
Right. We were talking about this a little bit today. My daughter, Maya, is a junior at Battlefield, and we're all just so proud of her. She's had a good little run the last couple of weeks. She went to the state indoor track meet and got 6th place in her individual event, and also the relay. And that same week made the varsity volleyball team at Battlefield, which is full of D1 prospects on that team.
Oh,
so
awesome.
she has selected, for herself that she wants to pursue track in college, not volleyball, but she wanted to be part of this really, really great team that went to the state semifinals last year.
Mm-hmm. Wonder where she got that.
So it's been
idea.
her goal.
Yeah,
It's been her goal to make this varsity team since she's been in high school, and she's like, Mom, I think I can do both. I think I can run track and play volleyball, and I'm committed to doing both. But that fear factor, sets in when she's going to the tryouts, when she's, a couple days before the state meet, and the anxiety's coming over her.
Mm-hmm.
And what that fear factor happen, and then doing it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that we're not scared, it's that we do it anyway.
Maxwell says, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Do it anyway.
Yeah.
And it's the doing it anyway, day by day,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's the mom getting up, you're fearful, gosh, I'm gonna go, put myself out here and try and get this better job, and leave the job, I'm gonna get a new job, but it's gonna be paid better. I'm gonna go ask my boss for a raise so I can better feed my kids. Or I'll move to a different part of town so that I can raise my daughter in a better neighborhood and go to better schools. I'm gonna move to a different state. Whatever that is, it's those little steps forward. Having the courage. You don't have to have the courage to take a big leap.
A big leap, absolutely.
You just have to have the courage
gradual
to
progression.
do the little thing, one step at a time. And I was listening to Abby Phillip, who's on CNN.
Yes.
A beautiful young black female
I
millennial.
love her presentations.
Yes.
How she engages with
Yes.
the subject matter.
And so they were talking about her the week of the election, which was supposed to be the night of the election. That ended up being,
The month of the
yeah.
yeah.
And they realized that what kind of stamina did it really take for you to be able to be on camera day in and day out, morning, night, 2 o'clock in the morning. And she said, at some point you can only drink so much coffee.
Right.
Like it just starts to give you the jitters after a while. And she said the good news is when you're a kind of cub reporter, you work a lot of long hours, so you kind of build up that stamina. She said, but it takes it to a whole nother level when it's day in and day out and day in and day out. She said, but I realized that I only had to be on for that next 2-minute segment, that next 5-minute segment, that next 3-minute segment. It's the only thing I can focus on. I don't know that I can be good on, 10 hours from now when I'm still on the camera, but I can do it again for this next 2 minutes. And so I think that's what I'm saying, is that you just take that one, I can have courage to do this. I can have courage to do the 300. Now I can have courage to do the 4x200 relay. Now I can have courage to go tomorrow and try out for the volleyball team. Now I can have courage to take that math test and keep my straight A's, I mean, it's one thing at a time. Okay, I can have courage to go to work today. I can have courage to knock on the boss's door and just take a deep breath and say, look, I've been here for 5 years, I'm doing great work, I'm the highest rated, I need a raise so I have a living wage so I can raise my kids.
Yes.
Just that one next little thing that you gotta do, because, and then when you see that body of work, I asked for this and I got this, I tried this and I did that, the accomplishments then pile up and you use the confidence that from the accomplishments, however large or small, over the time period to build your confidence to be able to do the next big thing.
And you start to default to that, as opposed to defaulting to what you used to do. I absolutely agree. The more you get that under you, right, that confidence and those steps, you start to default to doing that as opposed to maybe what you used to do. I see a lot of that up close and personal now. That I've been virtual since September, really since last March, and I get to see the families up close now. When they unmute, I get to hear, and I can hear things change. I've heard changes, I've heard positive changes, I've heard changes that aren't so good. I've intervened in some instances, in some families, I've given advice. I think one good thing about now versus maybe when you were growing up in your mom's home is that we have resources now in the community. And thanks to you and people like you in your position, you are aware of those things and what the community needs. You were sharing a situation about housing before we started. And it's a real need. And I see that need up close and personal where we've got several families living together. Not that that's a bad thing, but there are some of those families would like to be out on their own. They'd like to have their own space. They can't afford to have their own space. You know, I think that's one of the major differences, that we do have resources now. Whether or not people are aware of them, women are aware of those things for their students and for their families. I try to make them, when I find them out, I post and try to make sure the families that are in my realm, my classroom, are aware of those things that they need. If they're, you know, in need of food or those kinds of things, supplies. But I think that's one important thing, that they need to be connected with those resources that they need in order to better themselves and in order to make sure that their families get the things that they need.
And really kind of back to that sisterhood, depending on one another, to help each other out. Well, I'll take your kids after school because I'm working the early shift and I'm done at 3. So my kids will come over here. My girlfriend and I did that for a while. We hired a nanny together and paid for her together because it was much less expensive than hiring the person on her own to watch our kids after school. And that was my first foray into trying out what does a nanny look like, you know, to help me with my babies. And in my house while I was there working from home, my husband was there working from home. But regardless, that was easier because the other mom was out and you couldn't get, you know, the kid would have to be in aftercare and everything else. So you could come together. The other thing I was going to say to you, Andrea, is just how proud we are of you and how much respect we have for what you're doing, how much courage it took to put yourself out there and run, and how proud we were to watch you get sworn in, and enjoying that moment and reveling in that moment with you. And, you know, it seems like a gargantuan job, I'm sure.
You think?
Just a little bit.
And it probably is a gargantuan job, but kind of back to Abby Phillips' advice, it's just one step at a time. You know, you see a problem, let's solve this. You see another issue, let's solve that. And before you know it, you're going to look back after a year, after 2 years, after 3 years, and this body of work will have been created by you and through you that otherwise couldn't have been created because there's only one Andrea Bailey, right? And so you bring a unique perspective, your big heart, and you know, kind of thoughtfulness about what the issues are, and your strategic mind about how to solve them. Your body of your career, you know, from being all the different ways that you've served in your career, all that intellect, all that experience comes together to how you approach problem solving. And so just don't underestimate that and your unique perspective and your ability to move mountains here. But you're going to only be able to chip away at them a little at a time, particularly in this crazy political environment. And you have to do it along with your colleagues. You can't do it despite them. And so what can you do? How can you do it? What can you get consensus around? How can you move the needle just a little bit at a time? But as long as you're just having that forward motion, just know you're going to look behind and say, oh, wow, gosh,
we did get something done. Well, I thank you for that. I thank you, my 2 sisters, for how you lift me. And you do lift me. I mean, Kim, in church, when Benita was traveling, we were in church, she's praying for me, we're praying with each other. Benita came that night that I was sworn in, you were on the stage with me. I mean, it means so much. And we were not raised in the same home, but we find that resourcefulness.
And we're mainly connected through my mother.
Yes.
You know, if you really think about it. You know, she's the one that brought us together. Your love for her, our love for her, then our love for you.
Yeah. And I'm so, you talk about pride, I'm so proud of that. Because we don't talk every day, but when we talk, it is purposeful, it is deep, it is real, and it is always uplifting. It is always uplifting, you know. And so you are the lifter of my head. And my intent is to be the lifter of your heads. Always, you know, and I wanted to do this piece with you because I wanted to show our sisterhood in this community, what it really can be and look like as we move along this thing, through this thing called womanhood, at any season in our lives, you know. And so I thank you all, both of you. When I say all, I mean Maya, Andrea Olivia. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Oh, no.
Andrea Olivia.
How
and
wasn't that something?
The men in your lives are so much like the man in my life, in that they don't look at it as a chore. It's a family.
It is. They're steadfast.
They're steadfast and
Absolutely.
unmovable.
Yes.
You know, and I'm very respectful of them as well, because they're taking care of my sisters, and they're doing it well with pride. They do, with pride, you know, and that's an example also to the young men. I have a young son who is accomplished in his own right. He's in his early 40s, you know, but he needs to look at an Antonio or a Ron and emulate, as well as his dad. So this is how it should be, I believe, because it is the richness to pass on the legacy to the next generation. And so I just want to close by saying that you are continually in my heart and my prayers. And I'm grateful that I know that we can depend on one another, and we can show the next generation what true sisterhood and womanhood should be about in the next generations. So thank you. Any closing remarks that you'd like to share?
Just lift each other up. You know, I think that's the theme of the day, is lifting each other up, being there for each other, complimenting one another's kind of strengths, and just keeping your heart open. It can be hard in some of these crazy times, but that's what's going to get us through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just love, love reaching out to people maybe we haven't talked to. You know, this last year has been a challenge, I think, for all of us, and we're going to be moving forward and transitioning from that year to into the unknown, really, and kind of opening back up to continuing to reach out to those we know, and providing that support and love to them.
Thank you. I want to say to my staff, who was so gracious and making sure that we were properly fed before we did the segment, and we're here on a Saturday without their families, but saw it not robbery that they would come and serve us today to make sure that we're sending a message to our sisters in the community. And I love my staff. They are very protective of me, but they are such strong, equipped, intelligent, and forward-thinking women. And so I'm very, very fortunate to have them. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And have a beautiful weekend.
Thank you so
remaining.
much.
Okay.